I know.
That used to make me crazy. Like the only kid that I would like carry Owen around was Jeff's daughter Sophia.
Yeah.
Because she's like
Red,
the strongest
yellow,
kid I've ever met. Like she's literally like she's beautiful, she's feminine, but she is just a solid block. And like she's about a year and a half older than Ginny, so she was like right around 8 when Owen was
They're
born.
both so sporty and into soccer and everything.
Yeah. And so she was like 8 when Owen was born, and like so when he was like 1 and 2, Ginny would be like trying to pick him up, and she was like, ugh. I'm like, no.
Right,
And
right. Put him
Sophia's
down.
like, here, let me carry him. I was like,
Wow.
oh, okay, sure.
Jimmy's a little beanpole, like I
She
always
is. Yeah.
Tatum got knocked down by our neighbor down the street, like on her motor scooter. He was just walking on the sidewalk. She runs into the back of him on her motor scooter.
Cutting it close.
Scrapes his face up. Like he's pretty much already healed up. It hasn't even been a week yet, but
They can be
yeah. But I was
8
just
o'clock.
so
Let's
upset
roll.
'cause I saw it happen.
Let's roll. Good evening. Welcome to our City Council meeting on this March the 11th, 2024. We'll get started with our invocation, which will be provided by Jason Marlowe of Tuckasegee Baptist Church, followed by a Pledge of Allegiance by Boy Scout Troop 59. If you would, please stand with me.
Let's pray. Most kind and gracious Heavenly Father, Lord, we thank you for this day. We thank you for what you have brought us. Lord, I thank you for this town, for the council, for the mayor, administrators, police, fire department, and first responders. But most importantly, God, for the people that you have brought here that make up the town. God, I pray that you would be with us, that we would be good stewards of all that you have given us. Bless us and keep us as only you can. In Christ's name, amen.
Amen.
Please remain standing for the presentation of the colors. Color Guard, advance. Color Guard, post the colors. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Salute. Pledge.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, councilwomen, men and women, folks of Mount Holly. Thank you once again for allowing us this privilege to present the flags and the colors of this opening of this meeting. You know, it takes a lot we think about a bicycle. Have you ever thought about when you get on that bicycle, what it takes for that bicycle to move? It takes a lot of moving parts to get that bicycle to move. We really take that for advantage, and we take it as an advantage of that we're going to get on the same and it's going to move. But you got to push the pedal turns the gear pulls the chain turns another gear. All that being said, it takes a lot of moving parts working together to make that bicycle work, doesn't it? So what I want to encourage you is it takes a lot of work to make this community work. It takes a lot of work to develop these young men and women into the leaders of tomorrow. I'd like to encourage each and every one of you to do your part in making that bicycle work when it comes to the leadership of these, training up these young men and young women in our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Pastor Marlowe. Thank you, Troop 59, as always. You may be seated.
Oh, sorry. I have like a really floppy chair today. Oh, no, that is right there. Break the one on the other side.
Okay, as we continue our meeting, we'll set the agenda, so I need a motion to set the agenda by Ms. Harris and Ms. Shoemaker. All in favor? Motion is approved. There are our consent agenda, there are 10 items on the consent agenda. I need a motion to approve the consent agenda. Ms. Shoemaker and Mr. Reeves, all in favor? That is approved. Okay, now we'll go into our presentations by Hager Strategic Solutions, Bree Hager Wilhelm. I think I said that right.
I apologize, Mike couldn't be here with us today, but he sent the A-team, so it'll be fine. Mr. Mayor and council members, thank you guys for bringing us back and allowing us to continue to represent the city. We were really excited about how last session went, so we'd like to keep that momentum going, as I'm sure you all would too. We are looking to the future. This is a really exciting time in political history in the state, but we're also pre-session. So we're going to be starting back in a session at the end of April, possibly, depending on their schedules. We already have some ideas about what possibly could happen, but we do know, and you know, it's an election year. So we know that they will probably get in and out as quickly as they possibly can. I don't know why, but they will. So we're anticipating a hopefully quick in and out, get the stuff done that we need to get done. We have been working with Jonathan and Brian, and we are excited to continue, and Danny, of course, and we're excited to continue that work. We're going to be setting a legislative agenda before we go into session. We're going to try to get as much input from you all and from the town that we possibly can, so we're excited to sort of begin that process. More to come on that. It'll be good, exciting stuff. We're going to hopefully ride the wave of where we came off of from last session with our kind of big victory, so we're going to hopefully continue that. Going into the short session, we're very hopeful that it'll be short, quite literally, from hopefully April, hopefully to July. That's the goal, right? We know that we just had the primary. Y'all are probably more aware of that than most people, having probably lived within it. Not a lot changed for Gaston County, so there isn't much to report on that, but we're happy to do any type of analysis that you guys are looking for, and we really look forward to continuing the legislative planning process with you all very soon. If anybody has any questions, I will be around.
Any questions from council or comments? No? Mr. Meadows?
I just want to say thank you for your efforts. The return on investment has been high, so
That's what we like to hear.
you've set a pretty high bar. Yeah, so hopefully we can continue to have wins at the legislature.
Right, we hope so too. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next presentation will be from the CRO of their next event coming up, Mr. Mike King.
Thank you. I'm not Mike King. Mike has delegated me. I'm
Okay.
Dave Vanek. I've been involved with the CRO for about 7 years now. I've been serving there, and I've been on the board for like 4 or 5 years now. I want to acknowledge Mike. Mike joined the board a year ago at a little arm twisting from me, and is serving in our fundraising capacity, which is the number one thing we're trying to work on this year. Joe Swope is also with us here. He's does our newsletter communications and is our secretary on the board. And Jason Marlowe, who just did the invocation, is also on our board, although his term finishes in December. I prepared a little infographic, which I will leave for you, and everything I'm going to tell you is on here, so you don't have to take notes. But how many people know about the CRO? Are you familiar with the CRO? Everybody here? Half of the audience anyway, at least. The CRO's been in business for 70 years. It started by churches coming together as probably the best way to try to serve the underprivileged or people in crisis in the community. We continue that tradition here in Mount Holly. We are basically a food bank and also assistance in rent or utility support to neighbors in need. And we are open 4 days a week in the mornings, and we're down just down the street a little bit. Last year, just for a few numbers to give you a perspective, we served 2,300 households last year, which was 7,000 individuals and about 1,400 children. We gave out 220,000 pounds of food, and as most food banks, everything is measured in pounds of food. We get it as pounds of food, and we chart it, and we keep it, and we track it, and we give it out as pounds of food. I can tell you for a family of 2 or 4, it's at least a shopping cart. For a larger family of 3 and over, those are our distinctions, they get about 2 shopping carts full of food. And we have a criteria how often they can come, but if they get in need, they can come back again and things. And we have given out last year $133,000 in rent and utility support. We gave out probably double that during COVID because we had matching funds from COVID which we don't have now. And our partners, if you will, that where we get the food and the money from, about 80% of our food comes from Second Harvest Food Bank, which manages about 27 counties, North and South Carolina, and has 900 partners. We're just one of the many food banks in this region that get food from Second Harvest and from Food Lion. We have 2 Food Lions local that we pick up from multiple times a week, and then from, of course, the community and church drives. The post office usually does a drive. Some of the schools do drives, so we get a lot of items from the community as well. And then for financial side, most 90% of our money really comes from churches. We have over 20 current local churches supporting us, although there's probably 60 or 70 in our district, so that's also part of my goal, is to get more churches involved. And then the other is from private donations from individuals. So that's the in and the out. We have really 3 or 4 goals. I took over as president in January, and I set like 4 goals. One was financial, because we limit this year only $200 per individual per year, because that's all we kind of have to work with. Most people come in with utility bills anywhere from $20 to $100, and they come in with rent. $200, doesn't go too far, but that's all that we have to work with on funds. Food-wise, we're pretty balanced. It goes up and down depending on what we get when and what food drive, but we're able to usually supply a good supply of food to people that need the food. So funding for support of utilities is number one. We need more space. We're out of room. We literally are tripping over each other, so we're looking at what options we have. Our building is paid for, but we're looking for something else that we might be able to move to, at least what options would be present for that. Our IT systems and our website, Joe spent the last 3 weeks trying to get our website up and running. Everything's been outdated and is kind of archaic. Our software is ancient, and we've got new software coming that's being pushed to us from Second Harvest, which will help. And I've got an IT guy on the board that's going to help us do that. And then the fourth one is increase local business support, which is also a reason why I'm here tonight. You look at the money's coming in, we used to at times have business support, and we don't really have hardly any business support coming in now. If we do, it's kind of the exception. So getting the financials up that can actually support the clients in need would be helpful. On that issue, we have 2 upcoming events. One is in combination with the Spring Fest, the golf outing we've had for a number of years. We're back at the Pine Island Country Club this year, and that is April 29th. I have a flyer I'll leave with you as well on that. So if you know of a golfer or have some businesses that want to support us, we still have room for hole sponsors, and we have room for golfers, lots of them. That should be a good event. And then the one we're really going to do, the hope to bring in a sizable amount of money. We've hired a professional auctioneer and a company that only works with nonprofits, and I've been to a number of their events. Parker is their name. And we're having our first annual Mount Holly, a Taste of Mount Holly Gala, which will be held here. And I don't want to get the date wrong. It's September 14th, right, Mike? September 14th here. And that we could use your help in getting that word out and getting the right people in the seats. I know if we get the right people in the seats, the auctioneer, I've met him, and he will do a nice job for us in raising funds. I've been to a number of his events. So that's who we are and what we do and what we're trying to accomplish in continuing the tradition of serving the community. And I will pass these out. Any questions I can answer?
Any questions from council or comments? No? Thank you, sir. We appreciate all your efforts with the CRO. Thank you, Mike, for being
If you
here.
guys want to come and take a tour at any point, we'd be happy to give you the tour.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to go into our next part of the meeting tonight, the public hearing part. Public hearing to consider approval of Third Amendment to the Development Agreement with OMBMH. I need a a motion to come out of our regular meeting into our public hearing. Ms. Harris and Mr. Reeves, all in favor? Motion passes. We are now in our public hearing. Marie Anders.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So, as you recall, the City of Mount Holly sold the 725 Elm Street property to Old Mecklenburg Breweries Holding Company called OMB MH LLC in March of 2022, pursuant to a development agreement for redevelopment of that site. The development agreement includes a timeline with certain milestones for progress on this redevelopment project to be a restaurant and beer garden. The timeline included closing on a construction loan or other financing within 12 months of purchasing the property, which would have been originally March 31st of 2023. Last year, Council granted Old Mecklenburg a 12-month extension to close on the construction loan to March 31st, 2024 to give OMB MH enough additional time to acquire some adjacent property from Duke Energy to add to the overall plan. They did acquire that property. They did recombine it with the parcel acquired from the City of Mount Holly. And then more recently, John Marino, an owner of OMB, met with Jonathan Blanton and city staff members to request an additional 6-month extension on the requirement to close on construction financing. The requested extension would be to September 30th, 2024. Mr. Marino has stated multiple times that OMB is fully committed to the Mount Holly Restaurant Beer Garden project and is committed to completing construction, receiving a certificate of occupancy by March 31st, 2025, which is the original timeline in the development agreement, and holding a grand opening by September 30th, 2025, which is the original time in the development agreement as well. His only request was for an additional 6-month extension on the requirement to close on a construction loan. Now, that being said, you do have before you 2 different resolutions to consider. One resolution, which I'll call option A, if you approve it, would extend the construction financing an additional 6 months per Mr. Marino's request to September 30th, 2024, but would leave the remaining timeline alone. The second resolution before you, which is called option B, would also grant, if you approve it, a 6-month extension to the timeline to construct or to close on a construction loan or other financing to September 30th, 2024, but would in addition give authority to Mr. Blanton as your city manager to extend the requirement to receive a certificate of occupancy by a maximum of 3 months for good cause shown. If in fact 6 months is too tight of a timeline to complete construction, if at all OMB should run into any sort of construction delay and can show good cause, that would allow an extension of that deadline for up to 3 months maximum upon good cause shown without having to come back before you. But that being said, that was not a request from OMB. It was a staff consideration for you. And OMB is fully committed to holding a grand opening by September 30th, 2025, no matter what you do. So that being said, I know that OMB representatives sent a PowerPoint presentation that was included in your packet as well. Not sure if anyone's here tonight that wishes to speak on that. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Hey.
Come on up to the podium, yes. Just state your name and address for the record, please.
John Marino, 3114 Chillington Place, Charlotte, North Carolina.
Thank you.
So thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Council, and thank you, Marie, for that explanation. Sometimes life is difficult, and so we we are fully committed to this project. I think, do we have that presentation? Can we put the, where, I can click it on here? Are you gonna ask me to do technology, huh?
I think it's open on the bar at the bottom.
Is it? Is that it? Okay. All right, so I have to go back and forth. So, we haven't changed our commitment to this project one iota. What's happened is that things have occurred since the original signing which affect internal milestones. Just to give you an update on where we are, that's one of the renderings of the building. And let me give you a sort of a status update. As many of you may know, we're in the process of finishing the Ballantyne project. And I know you don't want to hear about Ballantyne, but we're literally in the final throes of finishing that up. And we expect to open in late April, early May. As soon as that's complete, or even if it's not complete, the intent is to pick up where we left off on the design completion on this project, which means finishing the design. The design is about 40% complete, and finishing the design in the spring and summer. Then, and then continue on with the project to be open by September of 2025. Just to sort of show you our commitment, I mean, you know we bought the parcel from you all. We also purchased an adjacent parcel from Duke Energy. We have done 40% of the site layout and architectural design, and we intend to finish that this summer. In total, we've invested over $700,000 on this project already, which includes the two site acquisitions, the design work, demolition of the existing water treatment plant, which was not usable. And we've also, because the first amendment to this was to take that warehouse off this site because the site was not big enough to accommodate a sufficient restaurant and beer garden and a warehouse. And so the valuable property that should be on the river is the restaurant and beer garden and not a warehouse. So we decided to take the warehouse out of the project, and that was the first amendment. And we actually purchased another 6.3 acres on the other side of town, the lot with the big water tower on it, which is where we want to put the warehouse. So, and we bought that, I don't even know when we bought that exactly, but so just to also update you, we have a great relationship with our bank. This is a letter our bank provided. I can give you a hard copy. It's hard to read it on this. But basically, we have a great relationship. They're fully committed. They fully expect, to finance this project. But you know the situation today, the environment financially, no bank is going to give us financing on another project until the last project is cash flowing, right? So, and so what we expect to do is, in parallel with the design this summer, finalize the financing so that we can begin construction this fall. To give you a more detailed view of the timeline, the design completion would happen this summer, and maybe we could get it done a little bit quicker than that, but I'm not sure. Then the permitting will be in the fall, and I've been told permitting takes about 3 months. We've put in 4 months there. But we would probably get started on some site work before maybe the building permit is done, and then we would begin construction late this year. Construction and then startup on this project is different than a project where we would be a tenant in somebody else's building. On this project, we are the building owner and the tenant. So what happens when somebody builds a building for you as a tenant and you have a different owner is they build the building, which may take 10 months or whatever, and then they hand it over to the tenant, and the tenant does their upfit. Because what they don't want to have is liability of two different sets of contractors working over each other inside of a building. And so then you have maybe another 6 months to do your upfit as a restaurant or whatever. In this case, since we're the building owner and the tenant, we will have one contractor doing the building construction and the upfit simultaneously. So instead of being in series, this construction will be in parallel. And that will help us contract the schedule versus if we were just leasing from somebody building a third-party building. Having said that, you know, to be honest, the March 25th or March 31st? March 31st, isn't it?
31st,
Yeah.
yes, sir.
March 31st date is going to be difficult. So I really liked your option B. But I don't feel that the September 30th date is difficult. It's just, it's a question of the building getting complete will be almost at the same time as the restaurant upfit's complete in this case, as opposed to them being in series. And so that March 31st date is tough, but the September 30th date from a December permit is not tough. It's quite easy, actually. So I think, I don't know exactly how it's going to go, but I don't feel uncomfortable with the September 30th date. And we are still fully committed. We want to get this thing open. We want to be open next fall, or I guess it's a year from this fall, but so we respectfully are asking for this extension because, we're not going to make the March 31st financing deadline. It's just our bank is simply not going to commit to it before we get Valentine open. That's, the banks have had a tough couple of years themselves, and they're kind of a little bit more skittish than they used to be. And so even though they're supporting us fully, they're our lender on Valentine, they're our lender in Charlotte on Yancey, and we've never had an issue with our banks. We've never had any trouble getting loans for these types of projects, but they're just not going to do it before Valentine's done. And so that's kind of the dilemma I'm in. I won't make March 31st. So lastly, just hopefully to make you feel better after saying that, that's what the site right now is projected to look like when it's complete. You have a parking lot over here on the left, upper left. Then you have the building in the middle. The beer garden is all the way along the front, overlooking the river. And it also wraps around the side, the Dutchman's Creek side. And there'll be a family play area in the back corner. We try to keep the kids away from all the other people. And then there'll be additional parking on the right side of the building there. So that's kind of the layout, overlooking the kayak landing there. So we're still excited about it. We want to do it. We hope you're giving me the extension. The alternative wouldn't be good. But, I guess I'll just leave it to you. And if anybody has any questions, I'll be happy to take them.
Any questions for Mr. Marino? Mr. Craig?
Will the airport project hinder any timelines at all?
So the airport project is not our project. So you may have seen in the news the OMB Beer Garden in the Charlotte Airport. The way the airport works is that HMS Host builds and runs the restaurants in the airport, almost all of them. Mm-hmm. There's a few that are done by other companies, but they pretty much build and run every restaurant in the airport. And so the Captain Jack's Tavern, which is branded OMB on E-Concourse, is not owned by us, and it's not run by us. It's run by HMS Host. What we did is we gave them a license agreement to use our brand because it's good marketing for us. And they sell our beer, which is also not bad. The D-Concourse one came about because I came home from a vacation with my daughters one night and got off a plane at D12 and walked by that Carolina Beer Company, which is not a very nice bar. That's my opinion, but and so I took a picture of it and I sent an email to the airport guys the next morning and I said, hey, you know what you should do with that? Convert it into a beer garden. And they did, and they are. So they agreed, and so we gave them another license agreement, and they're building an OMB beer garden at the end of D. Again, we have no interest in it, we have no ownership, and we're not doing any construction there. All we're gonna do is sell them beer after they finish it, and we give them the free license for our brand. And so that's, it doesn't affect us. We're off to the side, and when they get it done, we'll sell them beer. So that's it. The only thing we're doing is the license agreement, and then, of course, they sent us the designs as they were doing them and said, does this look okay? And we were like, yeah, that looks good. So,
Mr. Craig?
So does the Ballantyne property, is that this similar as Mount Holly when it comes to you owning and building?
no, and that's why I got into trouble there. So that's a traditional lease. Northwood Office owns the building, and they were building it, and we ran into problems last fall. And so we got some delays, and then we had some permitting delays and other things. But we couldn't even go into the building until they got their CO and handed it over to us. So, but it's almost finished now.
Is Mount Holly the only one that you will own the actual building and?
No, Ballantyne's the only one we won't own the actual
Okay,
building.
gotcha.
So we own Yancey in Charlotte, and we own this property, and we own the Cornelius property, which will be probably sometime in 2027, because that's also a development going around, and that has to wait. We have to wait until they get the road in and all the infrastructure. So we haven't started on that one. We did some, and then we bought that land in 2017. So that one went from first to last, just because of the various machinations of that development up there.
That can't happen in Mount Holly, right?
No, but
Going from
we have
now
we
to-
have a schedule,
Okay.
and like I said, I'm not asking to change the beginning date or the end date of this development agreement. What's happened is some internal milestones have become difficult for me, and that's why I'm here.
Any other comments, questions? Mr. Meadows?
So to say that I'm disappointed at where we are, at the least, is frustrating that we've selected you. And I've told you personally that we had two other concepts that are either in service or about to come in service that we selected your proposal over. And I just want for the record to say that OMB presented us with the timelines originally. We didn't set those. We took his word at what those would be. So while I'm disappointed, I am excited about the project and want to see it happen. However, I don't really want to continue having these public conversations about the project. So I would prefer to see us with a set of achievable milestones reflected. And I'm not sure that even option B, from what I'm hearing here, actually gets us there. So I would prefer us to have the back end honored is what you're saying, but we've got a couple of spots where you've got to get your financing and you've got to get construction started that we need to get kind of the right dates on. It sounds like you've moved the financing date to where you can achieve that. But if we start with that construction date, there's no way you're finishing in 6 months. I mean, it's just, construction's not going to happen. I think you had said 9 to 10 is what you expect. So I just want it to reflect what we're actually, managing our expectations to. And hopefully we don't have to have any more of these public conversations about, where are we with the project.
Yeah, I mean, I can't argue with you on that. I mean, I don't know when exactly I'll have permits. The timeline which I've laid out is realistic there, but assuming we don't have permits until late this year, yeah, it's not, the construction won't make it.
Mr. Meadows?
So I guess I'm looking at Ms. Anders, and could you help us get to realistic dates? And then I guess that's followed with the question of, can we do that on the fly, or do we need more time?
No, absolutely. So we received with you this updated timeline on Friday, and had already submitted these options for your agenda. But that doesn't mean that we can't make some on-the-fly amendments and get it right. So in general, these are just, kind of a starting point option for y'all to react to as a full council, and, you know, happy to make some strategic amendments here, and if the council has support for that tonight. If not, if it needs more reworking, then we can come back, but I think that there's some strategic things we can do.
Mr. Huff?
I would prefer that we not do it on the fly.
Okay.
I think it's fair to both sides not to do that. But if in conversations with Mr. Marino and staff can come back at our work session, if I may ask, Mayor, so that you guys can iron out deliverables, because I too this should be our last meeting or last agreement on March 25th, and then we're celebrating September 30th, which is, by the way, it's supposed to be easy, I heard you say. So
I think I just put my foot in it.
you saw me smile at you when you did that. Yeah. No, but all seriousness, I think I would rather do that on something that's important than doing it on the fly in a public setting here.
Then I would recommend that we, if there's support for that the council continue this public hearing to the March 25th council meeting at 6:30. And if that's the wish of the council to continue to gather some tighter information between staff and Mr. Marino on timelines and present an option that has an updated timeline reflective of what he shared with us.
Mr. Meadows?
Can I make that motion to continue public hearing until March 25th?
We need to address a couple things. We have anything else for Mr. Marino? All right, so we have no one.
There's a motion on the table.
Okay, all right, we'll go with that. That's fine.
I do have a comment, but I was, before he steps away.
Okay.
So did you make that motion?
I made the motion, it's just, but nobody's made a second
Okay.
yet.
Second.
Second by Ms. Harris.
Now we can discuss.
You don't have to vote. You may discuss before you vote.
All right.
So go ahead, David, what you were saying.
I was just going to say, we don't have anyone that has signed up for public speaking, so we can move on past that. So in order to do this, do we need to go back into our regular meeting?
No, I would recommend that you instead, if that's the council's desire, which there would be a vote to see that, continue the meeting instead.
Okay.
The public hearing, continue the public hearing to the March 25th at 6:30 meeting. We have a motion and a
Okay,
second
we
for
have a
that.
motion by Mr. Meadows and a second by Ms. Harris. All in favor? The motion is approved.
And Mr. Mayor, may I make
Yes.
one comment for you? I just want to say publicly, I do appreciate the significant investment you're making in the community. I'm just being impatient like a lot of other people in the community. We want to see it done so we can go and enjoy the space. So
I believe.
So don't want you walking away feeling like we don't appreciate the effort that you're making or recognize the investment, because it is significant.
We're also very much looking forward to it. Yeah, excited to have the project there, so.
All right, thank you, sir. We appreciate you.
Appreciate it.
All right, I need a motion to go back into our regular meeting.
You just.
While we're going to go on to the second public hearing, we'll just stay in, okay. All right, for the second portion of our public hearing, the public hearing for a proposed text amendment to amend the zoning ordinance, Chapter 6, Table Permitted and Special Uses, Section 6.4, Business, Professional, and Personal Services, to add Note 36 to Chapter 7, Special Requirement Notes to the Table of Permitted and Special Uses, Section 7.1, Notes to Table to allow animal grooming, no overnight boarding in the B1 zoning district, and attach special conditions to the use type case TA-24-2. Mr. Blackwell.
Good evening, Mayor and Council, and citizens of Mount Holly. This proposed text amendment has been submitted by the applicants, Ms. Elizabeth Patton and Ms. Bailey Pinkleton, and will make animal grooming, no overnight boarding, and allowed use type in the B1 Central Business District. It would also provide special conditions that would be applied to the use type in the B1 Central Business District, but not in the B2 and B3 zones where the use type is already allowed. These special conditions for the B1 Central Business District contained in the attached text amendment application are as follows. No outside storage or grooming. No overnight kenneling or boarding. no more than 12 animals at the business at one time. All animals obtaining service must be vaccinated to legal state requirements and have a vet record on file. No animal waste within 25 feet of the property. Animal waste must be removed daily. The retail of pet food, pet supplies, and pet accessories may be permitted, but can only cover 20% of the gross floor space of the building. These are the conditions that were submitted by the applicant. Currently, animal grooming, no overnight boarding is allowed in the B2 and B3 zoning districts. A little bit of background, a public hearing was held on March 4th before the Planning Commission, in which a vote approving this text amendment recommendation to council by 5-2 was had. In the B1 Central Business District defined in the ordinance of Mount Holly, it is a district for the central shopping area of the city of Mount Holly and its commercial trade area. The regulations of this district are designed to encourage the continued use of land for community trade and commercial service uses and to promote a concentrated development of permitted uses while maintaining a substantial relationship. This definition was created in 1996 when corrective zoning took place and as well as the time of the establishment of this current zoning ordinance. Some points made at the Planning Commission were, as relayed in the public hearing on the matter, that the text amendment from 2006 prohibiting animal-related uses in downtown was dated and that it was nearly 18 years old. Also, members questioned the ordinance prohibitions for specific uses rather than form-based codes, where less focus is placed on specific individual uses in favor of having all uses meet certain architectural requirements and other uniform requirements. For example, signage and outside storage prohibitions. The Planning Commission also approved a state of consistency by 5-2 vote, noting that the use was supported by the Comprehensive Land Use Plan. It is planning staff's recommendation to deny the proposed text amendment as submitted and was based on historic precedent from the strategic vision plan process that began in 2006 with the establishment of the Downtown Gateway District on Highway 27, as well as gathering data from other towns. Some of that data is in your packet. A point of note is that almost all smaller towns allowed such a use, particularly with no special conditions. Larger towns with a population over 20,000 people were more likely to prohibit animal grooming as permitted use. But there are still quite a few larger municipalities that allow animal grooming, as noted in the attached memo from the planning director, and its random sampling of 10 larger towns over 20,000 in population located in the Piedmont or central area of North Carolina. The applicants are here this evening, and I can answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions for Mr. Blackwell? All right. I need a motion to go into our public hearing by Mr. Huff and seconded by Ms. Harris. All in favor? We are now in our public hearing. We have any questions for Mr. Blackwell?
I didn't hear you mention some additional language regarding the distance around this area that this use would not be allowed?
Hasn't been added yet.
Okay.
So currently, the text amendment would be voted upon as is. However, there are two different options. Council could deny the text amendment based on the staff's recommendation in keeping with the prohibitions on animal-related services, or council could approve the text amendment based on the planning conditions recommendation. It's also important to note that council is not bound by the Planning Commission's recommendation. The council has the authority to approve with changes, or deny the text amendment after the public hearing. The initial public hearing notice was broad enough to allow council to modify Planning Board's recommendation to include additional stipulations initiated by yourselves after the public hearing without further action or public notice. The latter point means so long as the conditions are not considered substantial changes, new public hearings would not be required before the Planning Commission and City Council on this matter. A footnote by Professor David Owens from the University of North Carolina in Land Use Law in North Carolina, 3rd edition, about substantial changes after public hearing notice seems to be relative and helpful. Professor Owens notes that The rule of thumb is that the same people would have come to the hearing and offered essentially the same comments. It is unlikely that another hearing is required. So council
Thank
may
you.
add conditions.
Mr. Mayor, I have
Mr.
some
Meadows?
questions and comments, but I prefer to hear what's said at the public hearing first before I.
All right. We have one person signed up for a public hearing, Miss Betsy Patton. If you'll state your name and address for the record, please.
Hi, Mr. Mayor and Councilman. Thank you so much for letting us be here. We have really appreciated everything Mount Holly in the planning staff, the planning commission, and all the commissioners that I have spoken to. Y'all have given us a great deal of support and a lot of things to think about. We did not go into this dog grooming business trying to upset the apple cart in Mount Holly. That was not our intent at all. We have been looking for a place to have a dog grooming business in Mount Holly for about a year and a half, and we found a couple of spots that were not in the B1 district. They didn't pan out to be what we wanted them to be. I'm a little bit protective of Bailey. I kind of want her to be in an area that I think is safe and good for her, and downtown Mount Holly is exactly that. When we found this place, I went to the to fill out my permit or whatever it is that I filled out, and everything seemed to go fine, and I paid my money and all was well. And the next day, Josh, who was out that day, called me and said, "Yikes, you can't do that." Well, we already had our heart set on it. So I said, "What can I do?" And he said, "Well, you can do a text amendment." I mean, he didn't say do a text amendment. He said, "You can do a text amendment, but it might not work." And I said, "Well, what do I have to lose? I'll give it a whirl." So we did, unknowing that it was going to really be a can of worms. I did not mean that. It's a lovely spot. A grooming business for downtown Mount Holly would bring foot traffic to the other businesses and restaurants in the area. A dog grooming business is run very much like a human hair salon. You make an appointment, you have your service, and you leave. Just because we put in there that they're 12 dog maximum, that's worst case scenario. That's if someone doesn't pick their dog up on time, their child got sick at school. We have to hold the dog, do our next appointment, and wait for them to get there. Is that gonna happen? Maybe. So I have to be forthright in saying to you that we might have 12 dogs one day, but I really doubt that would ever happen because we schedule to prohibit that. Other complaints that I have heard, or not complaints, but concerns that I have heard would be noise. Yeah, dogs bark, but they don't bark any more often than babies scream, and there are ways to keep dogs from barking, particularly in a grooming salon. Dogs are basically have one-on-one contact with someone the entire time they're in the salon. And if you're familiar with dogs, you know that if they're being petted and loved on and hugged, they're not gonna bark. Not to say they will never have that happen, but they generally don't bark. They bark when they're neglected or scared or whatever. And if they're scared, there are ways to ease their anxiety with different scents, and I can't ever say the word, what's it called, pheromones that help dogs relax. So we'll embrace all those things. Music, they say they like classical music and reggae. I don't know, we'll try them both. But personally, I think my dogs, and I have a lot of them, like music, and they like dog TV, which is another thing to entertain them. The other concern that I had heard was animal waste. Well, I assure you that I don't like the smell of animal waste any more than you do. Bailey doesn't either. We don't want to smell it. Y'all don't want to smell it. We're not going to have that. There are new well, first of all, just like if you go to a human salon or the barber shop or whatever, the chances of a dog defecating in the dog salon are about like if you were to defecate when you went to the salon and have to excuse yourself. It just doesn't happen that often. They're usually house-trained animals. Not to say it's not gonna happen. But they do make a contraption called a dog genie. If any of you have children or grandchildren, I'm sure you've seen a diaper genie. It's basically the same thing, but it's for dogs, and it contains the smell. It wraps each parcel of waste, however you want to say that, up in a containment, and it has a tight-fitting lid to keep it from smelling, and it will be removed on a daily basis. We don't want to smell it. Y'all don't want to smell it. The people, citizens of Mount Holly walking around sure don't. And we intend to not allow that to happen. The patrons of the dog grooming salon will have about, usually a small dog that's being groomed has about a 1 to 2 hour grooming session. And during that time, the owners of the dog generally find something else to do. Well, in Mount Holly, they can find something else to do by visiting our restaurants and our shops and our bookstore or the park that's proposed or any number of things. And it will bring commerce and trade to Mount Holly, we believe. There's plenty of parking behind the space where we are hoping to rent. And we look forward very much to being a part of the town of Mount Holly. We did spend, I'll pass these around if you'd take one and pass it. We spent only one afternoon gathering signatures on a petition, and it was one afternoon because I'm old and I can't walk very far. So everybody in the downtown area wanted us to be there. Everyone we spoke to. And everywhere we went, there was somebody there, and they all wanted us to be there, so that was good. I don't know what more I can tell you, except for that it will build commerce and economic growth to the town of Mount Holly. We will address any concerns that you may have, and I look forward to any questions from you.
Any questions or comments for Ms. Patton? Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So I need a motion to come out of our public hearing into our regular meeting. Mr. Meadows, Ms. Harris, all in favor? Motion passes. We are now back into our regular meeting. Council, what's your pleasure?
I make a motion that we approve with a distance stipulation to it. No other business this type can open into B1 within a quarter mile, half a mile, whatever we choose.
We'll make your decision.
Which distance do you want in your motion?
I would say half a mile.
Okay, I have a motion. Mr. Meadows?
I'll second it for discussion.
Second. Okay, now we need discussion. Mr. Meadows?
So I want to ask staff a couple of questions as we go through this. First, I want to say the public process we go through works. It's not difficult or, it's the process. It's designed to create conversation and to explore items. I find myself in a quandary here because in all the time I've been both on the Planning Commission and on the council dais, 15 plus years now, I've never come across a situation where we had a staff recommendation at odds with the Citizens Advisory Board, and the Citizens Advisory Board was not unanimous. So that's caused me some pause because I highly respect staff and the work that they do. They're the professionals. They're the ones that study this and have certifications and do all the research, have a lot of faith in our staff and buy what they are often selling. But also respect and have been on and know the work that goes into our Citizens Advisory Board. So this one's tough, but it's part of the public process. And I just want to say to the applicant, all of the discussion has had very little to do with you as the applicant. The conversation has been entirely about public process, and public policy. So we're tasked with figuring out, how do you navigate this and how do you set a policy at the end of the day that serves the community as a whole, not just a particular individual. I personally think you have done a lovely job managing the whole process. I've been at both your public hearings and it's been very nice to watch and hear you go through that. So I just want to make those couple of comments. But what I want staff to do is to talk a little bit about, from a public policy standpoint, which let me put the bottom line up front. I'm going to propose something that I hope, as Mr. Reeves has pushed out, that we can all support. But I think it's also important to have on the record, how did we get here? You know, so there's some history here. I think we had a consultant during the strategic vision plan, and then we had a particular case with a pet-oriented business. I'd like that to be discussed by staff and put on the record. I don't know if Josh, you're prepared to do that, or if Greg is there before I make my other proposal.
I will yield to Mr. Beal.
Yeah, so since I've been here since '01, a lot of the staff have not had the background. So 2006, we began the strategic vision plan. So in 2003, you had a vision process. 250 citizens came together, passed the $5 million bond referendum. We obviously wanted to put that plan or that vision on paper. So that process began in July 2006. Deb Ryan was the architect of that plan. She was a UNC Charlotte professor who just recently retired. We were the first town in the entire region to do a vision plan. Some other towns piggybacked on that. And the first recommendation coming was there's a lot of uses you allow in your central business district that may not be kosher. At the time, we did have a pet store, animal grooming business that caused concern. There were other animal-related uses. In fact, going back to '05, council denied a petition, a text amendment to allow a pretty nice vet hospital animal clinic in downtown, which is now L&E Properties. That animal clinic is actually open in Gastonia. Felt that B2 and B3 were the holding zones for these animal-related uses. So going back to Councilman Meadows' question, that's really how we got here. Those were specific recommendations. That plan was $120,000. The city paid to cover it was a 5-step plan. That's how we got the design guidelines for voluntary residential annexation as well, and some of the very first plans for the downtown gateway and the south gateway. And you've seen what that's turned into, so.
Okay. Can you talk a little bit about the code enforcement process that we had to go through to eliminate what was then a non-conforming business?
Yeah, certainly. And really around the time in '06, we didn't have too many documented problems. I think the problems really began after 2010, but it was a non-conforming business at the time. Animal waste on the sidewalk, a lot of outside storage problems. You know, we had a downtown design manual that allowed no painting of brick. The building was painted without authorization, a bright pink color. We had to pursue that. But really around 2014, we entered some really concerning code issues with the actual building itself. We brought in, there were 25 documented violations. We contracted with a level 3 buildings inspector from Central Iowa Council of Governments. He said that we needed a structural engineer involved. The building owner at the time had to hire a structural engineer and said this building is unsafe for human occupation. And ultimately, in June 2016, that's finally when we resolved the case. So it was about 2 years working through the code issues.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Mr. Meadows.
So I just wanted to point out that we had a professional planning organization come in and raise the flag and say, hey, pet businesses have a history of causing some trouble, and we were followed by having some trouble. So the consternation that we experienced is not necessarily around the applicant, it's about past experience. So having said all that, I wanted that all on the record. I'd like to propose an alternative approach that kind of balances what our Citizens Advisory Board and our staff has brought forward. Mr. Reeves has already kind of recommended one piece, and I have another one that might surprise a few folks. But I would like to have the proximity. I think 3,000 feet might be a little easier number than a half mile. I think it's only a few feet more. I'd like us to consider that. And the other one that I know was proposed by the applicant, but from a public policy standpoint and what we've kind of desired through the strategic vision plan to see in our downtown is retail. So I don't understand the limitation on the 20% of retail. I personally would like to see that lifted entirely. You know, if this business morphed into straight dog retail, I don't think anybody would be upset about that. If the grooming part doesn't work and it becomes, you know, a pet supply store or something along those lines, I don't think anybody would have any challenges with that. So those are the two conditions I would like to see come forward. I don't know if anybody else has anything else to add to the mix, but I'd like to see us remove one and add one as far as the conditions go.
Any other comments?
So I just kind of want to make a comment about, I think it was cool that you went to the downtown businesses, introduced yourself, and got them basically to sign off on that. Because, I mean, I want to listen to the businesses, the people, you know. And so with you doing that, of course, it might not have been the approval, like, at the end, but at the same time, it didn't hurt. And I thought that was cool. because it had people talking, you know. That's always a good thing. Also with how times have changed even in 15 to 20 years with how dog-friendly places are. And I think that's really cool that I think it would kind of complement what's going on right now in town. And so if it does get approved, best of luck, of course.
Mr. Huff?
I'm not in disagreement with what,
Hold on one just a second. Mr. Huff?
It's okay. No, I wanted to comment as well and really back up what Jeff said, or sorry, Councilman Meadows. Having met these two, you can tell that they're not your average people. They're really kind, nice, genuine people who want to do a great job. And from the beginning, it's never been a question about you. It has been, as Jeff, Councilman Meadows said, it's about public policy. It's about how do we do this after we've gone through this process of changing the ordinance, and then the first time it gets challenged, basically the second time it gets challenged, we decide to do something different. I have a problem with that, okay? However, my other issue was this affects the entire B1 district, all right? The addition of the proposed either half mile, 3,000 feet is acceptable to me. I think that would support not having another type business like this in the area, which was my major concern. I don't like making rules for all exceptions and exceptions for all rules, but that's what we end up doing, okay? And when we stick by, we get a black eye because, you know, we don't listen. So we're listening. So I just wanted to I want to extend that to you. Thank you for inviting me for coffee. I enjoyed the conversation and meeting you. That's it, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Ms. Harris?
As you all know, I am a dog person, and I've spoken with her, and she is a genuine dog lover. And I don't think that she's going to do any of those things that, you know, were done 20 years ago. So I'm just saying that I think she's a good person.
Mr. Reeves?
I just want to reiterate what everybody else has already said. Mr. Meadows suggested the 3,000 feet, I think it was. I don't know what the difference between 3,000 feet and a half a mile is. It's a little bit more, I think. But I mean, I'm not opposed to any way we do that, and I like the stipulation removing the 20% because I thought that was kind of restrictive myself. Because if they want to put more retail in there to cater to our pets and so on and so forth, I'm all for that. So, okay.
Ms. Shoemaker?
Yeah, and I just want to kind of reiterate the comment I guess Councilman Huff sort of touched on was that, you know, this, you know, you and also Ms. Patton mentioned that this became sort of a kerfuffle, right? Like we had a bit of a thing about it, a can of worms. It was never a personal thing. Council's responsibility is actually to look at these items and text amendments and zoning regulations and not look at the case in front of us, but look at the ramifications of a decision and what could possibly happen over the next 25 years based on a decision. So while we know that the people in front of us are going to do a phenomenal job and take the utmost care of the pets in their responsibility, like in their care, the issue is, what if it's so amazing and so lucrative that a whole bunch of other people decide that they want to open one too, and they are not good, you know? So that was my actual, almost my only concern. Almost my only concern was what happens if we open the door. And I think that Councilman Meadows and Mr. Beal have worked together to create a really good solution here. And I'll let Mr. Reeves amend his amendment, so we can, or his motion.
One second. I want to applaud you guys for jumping through all these hoops and just crossing the finish line almost. We're close to that. I think you guys will be a great addition to downtown because you're good people, and I think you'll do the right thing. So we're going to go back to Mr. Reeves, and if you're okay with amending that, your motion, and Mr. Meadows, you're good there with the taking off that 20% on the retail and the 3,000 feet. So I need to ask
He needs to amend his motion.
Yes.
first.
I make the motion that we go with Mr. Meadows' recommendation that we do 3,000 feet, remove the 20%.
All right, and Mr. Meadows seconds that, and all in favor, raise your hands. It passes. So we're moving forward with that. All right. All right, we're going to go to public comment now. And first person signed up for public comment is Dennis, is that Elderly? And if you would state your name and address for the record, please, sir.
Yes, my name is Dennis Eldridge, and my address is 301 Old Mount Holly Road, Stanley, North Carolina. I own a towing company, and my drivers are located mobile, and you guys have a city ordinance of 1424 that doesn't allow tow trucks to be at their property. But, you know, for me to have property in Mount Holly is so expensive for me being a small owner. But second, in Stanley, it's the same way. There's no property, and property is expensive out there as well. So my drivers are mobile, they keep their vehicles at home. When we get a roadside or emergency call, then we get in our truck and leave. I'm trying to get you guys to amend that, to remove the tow trucks off of that ordinance.
Okay. Are you finished with your comments?
Yes.
All right, thank you, sir. We
Thanks.
appreciate it. Staff will be back in touch with you. All right, James Lathan.
James Latham, 448 Augustus up in Dutchman's Ridge. I know I've got a lot on that list, and I only have 3 minutes and you guys can't comment, but I just wanted to give some comments and then a suggestion. So I go to all the neighborhood meetings, and I just wanted to kind of give what the feeling of those meetings were. So in order, the police chief was kind enough to show up and talk to everyone on the board, and we were very, very appreciative of everything they did. So thank you guys, good hire, appreciate that. There's been a lot of complaining about the dust on the road from National Gypsum, so I don't know if you guys could be vocal towards them to either secure their trucks, or if there's something that can be done to limit the dust on the road, we appreciate that. Third thing is there are a lot of potholes around Freightliner, and they just continue to be a problem, which obviously they're big trucks, and that's going to continue to happen. So I would ask that either the fire chief or police chief or what have you just continue to be vocal to the state to have their roads fixed quickly. I appreciate that. And then the last two items, I'll start with the sidewalks that were approved in next to Belmont Abbey, I think are 6 feet versus I think the code is 8 feet. And I only bring that up because my kid went to the school next to our neighborhood and had to walk every day. So we came to the city council at one point and asked, could we have Gaston County School fund part of it, and the city or the neighborhood fund another part of it, so that we could actually put a sidewalk in between our neighborhood and the school. And ultimately, we were told that the code is 8 feet, and we had to put an 8-foot sidewalk, which was not inside the budget. But then I see the sidewalk that was approved next to Belmont Abbey at only 6 feet. So I don't know if that's grandfathered in or what, but if you could look at the ordinance, I'd appreciate it. And then finally, just a suggestion, there's that piece of property that is between, it's on Woodlawn Road between, I think it's Avenue B and Hawthorne. If you guys, just a suggestion, would want to maybe clear that area out and put like some sort of river walk or something like that, I think that might be a nice addition for Mount Holly, and probably a pretty cheap thing. So that's my final comment.
Thank you for your comments.
Appreciate it, thank you.
Mr. Gary Brinkley.
I'm Gary Brinkley, live at 176 Tom Sawyer Lane here in Mount Holly. And I'm back to talk about taxes again. And I'm going to keep coming back to talk about taxes as long as I come across things that I think are worth, mentioning. At last month's meeting, after that I had 2 calls from 2 council members to talk about, they basically were in agreement with me that taxes are an issue, and indicated that there's work with staff to make some more information available. So I look forward to that. I appreciate the interest, and look forward to some new capabilities sometime in the future. Absent having any more data, I had this idea at the retreat, and I thought, well, I'm going to look at the GIS. So I went in to look and see what property the city of Mount Holly actually owned. And to my surprise, came up there were 6 properties in the East Catawba Avenue area that I think are part of the Veterans Park expansion. What surprised me was the investment for that was $2.1 million paid to the owners. I'm going to guess that the additional expenses that were incurred for legal fees and closing costs and so on, so we may be talking about $2.5 million. I really doubt most of our citizens understand and appreciate that. So I feel like that we need to have better disclosure to the public about that. And I talked last month about wants and needs. These purchases to me fall in the category of wants, not needs. And if we're going to be tight on our budget and tight on our tax rate, we've got to focus on our wants, not our needs. Other way around. Focus on our needs, not our wants. And then lastly, we need to talk, I think, more publicly about the what I consider the downtown redevelopment, which is often referred to as the Veterans Park expansion. Again, I doubt that most of our citizens understand this and appreciate it. Unless you've gone to many meetings and put all the pieces together, you're not going to understand it. And then finally, I realize in going through this that my knowledge of city financing is weak, and would love to get some education from the city and the city budget office to help us as citizens understand what's going on. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Brian Sorelli.
Brian Sorelli, 217 Stowe Creek, Stowe Creek Lane. Good evening. With the Mount Holly Community Development Foundation, we again plan to be here every single week. Have a few things that we have coming up I just want to let you guys be aware of. But first, I just want to encourage all the council members to make sure that you're utilizing our liaison to you, Kenneth, in any programs or activities or things that you want us to be involved in, as long as they align with our mission. It's something that we can discuss to try to help council out. So just a couple things we have coming up. As I stated last month, on April 27th, we're having our Run Mount Holly. It's a 5K and a 10K. It's going to start right here. You can find the sign-ups through Run Sign Up. The race day registration starts at 7:15. The 10K actually starts at 8, and the 5K starts at 8:30. After the race, we're planning on having a small party or get-together. We're going to have music and a couple food trucks, trying to encourage the runners that are coming into the community to stay in the community. And we're going to be encouraging them in the different ways to get down to Main Street, to get to the different businesses, and see what we have here in Mount Holly. The next event we have is our art crawl. It's on June 8th. There's a 9 to 10 a.m. juried art show drop-off. 10 to 2 is the actual art crawl. We'll be walking through different businesses with art-inspired activities. And the juried art show will take place from 2:30 to 4 p.m. here at the Grand Hall. So again, we appreciate everybody and what everything you guys are doing for us, but we want to make sure that we're here to help you guys.
Thank you. Mr. William Brooks.
William Brooks, 102 Houston Street, Mount Holly, North Carolina. Make it short and sweet. So I challenge the council with knowing our numbers as far as traffic goes, because all the residential and apartments and commercial properties are scheduled to be built. At this point in time, I don't think that our roads can handle it, and I don't think that our infrastructure is properly managed, or even any plans to manage any of it. I live 1.1 miles from Mount Holly Middle School. It takes me 10 to 12 minutes to get to school each morning. Should take about 3. Speaking of Mount Holly Middle School, do we have any plans to build another middle school, add on to the existing one, or have we talked to Gaston County School Systems just to see if there is anything that we can do? Because with all the planned houses, residential and apartments coming in, there's gonna be higher numbers for the middle schools, or middle school, shall I say. So, just something for y'all to think about.
Thank you, sir. All right, we're going to continue our meeting. We're going to go into closed session. So I will need a motion to go into closed session. Ms. Shoemaker and Mr. Craig. Mr. Craig, all in favor? We are now in closed session. Lost it there.
Definitely.